Hey Vikings Nation! Are you ready for some Minnesota Vikings news that could shape the entire offseason? Because today we're diving into something incredibly interesting. The Minnesota Vikings might not be making the massive free agency splashes we've seen in recent years, but that doesn't mean big changes aren't coming. And here's the twist that has fans talking. Instead of chasing superstar contracts, the Vikings could target smart, strategic signings that quietly strengthen the roster around young quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Sometimes those under-the-radar moves end up being the ones that win championships. So today we're breaking down 11 realistic free agent targets for the Minnesota Vikings. Some could help the offense, some could rebuild the defense, and a few might surprise you. Trust me. By the end of this video, you'll definitely have a favorite name on this list. But before we jump in, I want to know something from you, Vikings fans. If the front office only signs one player this offseason, which position should it be? Running back? Defensive tackle? Safety? Drop your opinion in the comments because your take might be exactly what the Vikings should be thinking about. Now let's start with the big picture. The reality right now is that the Minnesota Vikings are facing a tough salary cap situation. Reports suggest the team is currently about $45 million over the cap, meaning several roster moves will need to happen before free agency truly begins. That means difficult decisions could be coming. Veterans like Aaron Jones, Jonathan Allen, and Javon Hargrave have already been mentioned in potential trade or release discussions as the Vikings try to regain financial flexibility. This situation is very different from the aggressive spending we saw recently. Just think back to the massive free agency wave where Minnesota added players like Sam Darnold, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Greenard, and others to quickly reshape the roster. Because of that, the strategy this year could shift dramatically. Instead of blockbuster deals, the Vikings might focus on mid-tier and value signings that fill specific roster holes while keeping the salary cap under control. And that brings us to the first realistic target that could make a lot of sense for the Vikings offense. One interesting name is running back Kenneth Gainwell. After a strong season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Gainwell proved he can be both a runner and a receiving weapon out of the backfield. Last season he produced over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, caught 73 passes, and scored 8 total touchdowns, showing the type of versatility modern NFL offenses love. Imagine Gainwell joining a backfield rotation in Minnesota. Pair him with a physical runner and a rookie draft pick, and suddenly the Vikings could have a balanced running attack that takes pressure off J.J. McCarthy. Another intriguing and affordable option is running back Michael Carter. Carter has quietly built a reputation as one of the more reliable pass-catching backs in the league. Across his NFL career with the Jets and Cardinals, Carter has consistently been used on third downs, catching at least 33 passes in 3 different seasons. For the Minnesota Vikings offense, that kind of skill set could be extremely valuable. A dependable receiving back can keep drives alive and create mismatches against linebackers. Now let's talk about a position we rarely discuss but could suddenly become important in Minnesota. The fullback role might open up if longtime Viking C.J. Ham moves on or retires. If that happens, one of the best replacements available could be Reggie Gilliam from the Buffalo Bills. Gilliam is known as one of the league's best blocking fullbacks, posting strong run-blocking grades and contributing heavily on special teams with 300 to 400 snaps every season. Adding a versatile fullback like Gilliam could quietly help the Vikings' run game and give the offense a more physical identity. Now let's move to the wide receiver position, where depth could become a concern if certain players leave the roster. Veteran receiver Kendrick Bourne could be an interesting WR3 option for the Vikings if they decide to add experience behind their top playmakers. Bourne has recorded 329 career receptions and proved last season he still has big playability with back-to-back games of 140 receiving yards for San Francisco. For Minnesota, a veteran like Bourne could stabilize the receiver room and provide reliable targets for a young quarterback. Next up is a position that might be one of the biggest priorities this offseason: center. The Vikings could look at veteran center Tyler Biadasz, who was recently released and quickly became one of the more intriguing options on the market. However, there's an important update here. Biadasz has reportedly already signed a 3-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers, meaning Minnesota will likely need to look elsewhere. And that leads us to another center option who might actually fit the Vikings' budget better. Center Luke Fortner could be a fascinating value signing for Minnesota. Fortner struggled early in his career but had a breakout stretch last season when injuries forced him into a bigger role. Sometimes offensive linemen develop later in their careers, and if the Vikings believe Fortner is trending upward, he could be a low-cost solution with upside. Now let's switch to the defensive side of the ball, where major changes could be coming. If the Vikings move on from players like Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, the defensive tackle position suddenly becomes a massive need. One intriguing candidate is Levi Onwuzurike, a talented but injury-plagued defensive lineman who previously played for the Detroit Lions. When healthy, Onwuzurike has shown real potential, generating strong pressure numbers and posting a solid PFF grade around 70 during his best season. Another defensive line option is veteran Tim Settle, who has quietly built a strong career as a rotational interior lineman. In his most recent season, he recorded 38 pressures, 5 sacks, and 10 tackles for loss, proving he can disrupt the pocket from the inside. For a Vikings defense run by Brian Flores, adding a powerful interior presence like Settle could be extremely valuable. Now let's talk about the secondary, because this is another area where Minnesota could make some smart moves. Cornerback Greg Newsome II is one of the more intriguing young defensive backs who could be available. The former first-round pick has already played over 70 NFL games, giving him plenty of experience despite still being only 26 years old. If the Vikings can land Newsome on a reasonable contract, he could immediately compete for a starting role and strengthen the defense. And finally, we have two safety options who could help fill a massive leadership void if longtime Viking Harrison Smith retires. First is Kyle Duggar, a versatile defender known for his physical style and ability to play multiple roles in the secondary. Across his career, he has recorded 11 interceptions, 27 tackles for loss, and several defensive touchdowns, showing the playmaking ability that defensive coordinators love. Another intriguing option is Ifeatu Melifonwu, a big and athletic safety who previously stood out during his time with the Detroit Lions. At 6 feet 2 inches and 205 pounds, Melifonwu has the size, speed, and versatility to thrive in aggressive defensive schemes like the one Brian Flores runs in Minnesota. So Vikings fans, now the big question is yours. Out of all these realistic free agent options, which player should the Minnesota Vikings sign first? Would you go after a running back like Kenneth Gainwell, strengthen the defensive line, or rebuild the secondary after Harrison Smith? Drop your opinion in the comments because Vikings Nation always has the best football debates. And if you love staying updated with the latest Minnesota Vikings news, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with another Vikings fan who's already counting down the days to free agency. Because trust me, the Vikings offseason is just getting started, and things could get very interesting. Skull, purple circle, yellow circle.